Good afternoon, everyone. I keep seeing, Pat, aren't you tired of coming to these things? I've seen you at pretty much every session.
I think I am being zoomed out, but they've been excellent sessions and I hate to miss them. And this one I think is a critical one.
Oh, well, we'll see. So, hello, everyone. My name's Ryan Murray. I'm the Executive Director of Washington CASA, and joining me is...
Is that my interlude? Ta-da! I'm Kati Brown, and I am Program Coordinator down here in Walla Walla, Washington. I am also the Legislative Chair on the Board of Directors for the statewide WACAP program.
I wanted to give you guys all... So this is what... So we're a little bit early in... So this is the legislative preview. We're a little bit early in legislative times, right? So we just had some elections. And then not only that... Well, I'll just jump into it. There's our introductions. So this upcoming legislative session is what is known as a short session. Katie, I'm going to give you so you can let people in so I'm not distracted.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay. So this upcoming legislative session, which starts around January 10th, is going to be a short session. So it's only 60 days. As a pair, every other year, it's a short set. So it's a supplemental budget session. So basically the only reason the legislature is getting together this time around is to pass a little bit of a budget, kind of an update to the budget, and then just any other policy stuff that they need to do. It's a short session, and then every other year it's a long session, or 105 or 105 days. So this session is only 60 days. And just to give you an idea of kind of like what a compressed calendar it is. So next week or in the next couple of weeks, the legislature will get together down in Olympia. It's called Committee Assembly Days. And that's where they just basically sit down, figure out which legislators are going to be on what committees, kind of get all that taken care of, and then basically are in preparation for January 10th, which will be the session start date. I think it's either January 10th or January 17th, but that's when session officially starts. It's actually the second Tuesday or second Monday of January is when session always starts. And then you can see 3 weeks later, bills are done and out of committee. So there's only going to be about 3 weeks to hear new legislation. And then it's done, essentially. And then it goes through the rest of the process. And the last day of session is going to be March 11th. So there's a lot of, it's a very compressed schedule. I'm not going to go through all of that, but just so you know, for those of you that follow this stuff, let's do that. How many of you all follow the legislature or familiar with legislative stuff or have done any legislative advocacy in your day? Cool. Well, if you've got any questions along the way, just pipe up and ask. Yeah, good. So here's the big news. And this is why I wanted you guys to hear all this. So our Washington court has approved 2 budget requests for us to move forward and present to the legislature this year. This is the first time this has happened since 2007. So we are very lucky and very fortunate to be able to have this. And so we have 2 proposals that we are putting to the state legislature this time around. One is for regional program attorneys, and the other is for Americorps funding to help us recruit new volunteers across the state. And I'll go into each of those separately in the next couple of slides. So the court has already approved this. That means it has gone forward. It's got the court's blessing. And so then from there, it will go to the governor's office. And so then they have to, the governor essentially in mid-December, so they're working on actually putting together a draft supplemental budget right now. And that budget that the governor releases, that is kind of the template that the legislature, that's the starting point for the budget discussions. And so that governor's budget will be released. It's usually around mid-December. So sometimes it's like December 9th, sometime December 15th, sometime around in there. Historically, the governor is very reluctant to mess with the court's budget because of a separation of powers issue. I have seen times where the governor won't cut specific things out of the court's budget, but will just say, nah, instead of that 20 million you asked for, I'm only going to give you 15. You guys decide what you're going to cut. But I've already been in contact with the governor's office. I think we're in really good shape to move forward with these requests. And so let me give you a little, any questions about that, or other than what are we asking for? Okay, let's talk about the regional program attorneys. So we are asking for 10 program attorneys that we can sprinkle throughout the state. 8 of those will be in regions. And so this state of Washington here, this is kind of the rough, I did this a couple of years ago, but this is kind of like the rough configuration of what it'll look like in the distribution. So in case you didn't realize this, attorneys are very expensive. And so in order to be competitive with the parents' attorneys and now the kids' attorneys, this is, they are getting $140,000 a year. And so we wanted to make those contracts competitive. And so that's what we asked for. So we're going to put 8 throughout the state. So essentially, I tried to keep them in DCYF regions as much as possible, but like, and then, but King County will get 1. Pierce and Kitsap will share 1 because they already share a DCYF office. And then the peninsula or the west side of the state, split that in half. So, and these are just relative size. The other thing too, the way that we're going to do this is with those 8 is they're just going to get a contract, right? Basically 140 grand, here you go. You do you. We're not going to be paying mileage and all that other stuff. So I'm hoping that at least offsets, you know, it's expensive to live out here on the west side compared to what it may cost to live out in Spokane or even the Tri-Cities. But the downside is they're going to be doing a lot of traveling if we ever get out of COVID. So it was kind of to kind of offset those 2 expenses. So we'll see. I'm sure they're attorneys, and they'll, as soon as we hire them, they'll start complaining and saying, we need to make more, we need more, we need more. I'm so busy, but that's how it is. Not only will we have those 8, but then we'll also have 1 ICWA and tribal specialist, right? So that attorney will help. We have 5 tribal guardian ad litem programs. We have 5 volunteer programs out on reservations. And so that attorney will help those 5 tribes, as well as provide assistance to the other 8 and the rest of us for ICWA stuff, right? ICWA related issues and matters, that will be our ICWA expert. And then finally, we'll have 1 managing attorney here at the WACAP office, and he or she will, or they will be responsible for the other 9. And coordinating some appellate work. That's one of the big things that we're hoping for. So questions about that, or thoughts, comments? So what will they do? So the 8 regional attorneys, each county will get a ballpark allotment of hours based on their size and caseload, right? So basically divvy it up equally among their region. Big thing is going to be just assisting with filing and preparing motions. If there's one thing, I mean, we heard Commissioner Mack say it, we heard Commissioner Ressa say it. The court is really looking to us to more frequently engage in the court process, file those motions when things need to happen on behalf of kids and families. Let's get these things done. So that's a big one. The other piece too is trial prep. So both for fact findings and terminations, basically making sure that the program is legally supported in any of those fact findings or termination trials, maybe even doing some cross-examination if need be, but just participating in those trials as much as possible. Probably not the whole thing, but being there when we need them. Training, giving us training on new laws, just general training. And then finally, just general program consultation, just so that the programs have somebody, an attorney that they can reach out who knows this area of law, who's familiar with it and practices in it. And that's the big piece too. A lot of our programs have access to like county attorneys, but none of them generally practice dependency. And dependency is kind of its own sticky wicket, and it's got its own set of rules and stuff like that. And so the counsel provided by those like county attorneys isn't necessarily the best. Yes, they know the basics of like filing a motion and things like that, but beyond that, what do we do if, or how should we respond to this, or that legal strategy piece is kind of lacking when it comes to those county attorney pieces. The ICWA attorney is going to be doing the same, except they're going to be doing it for the 5 tribal programs. And then also, like I said before, be available to assist ICWA applicable children in state court as well. And then the managing attorney oversee the work of the other 9 attorneys and also coordinate appellate responses. So one of the reasons this is going to be, I'm hoping we can kind of ride some of the momentum, but you all heard that kids attorneys got funding last year. But what that kids attorney program is only funding legal rep for kids 8 and above. So one of the ways that I was able to put this to the court, and we're going to be able to leverage, I think, this messaging too, is that, well, what about those kids 8 and under? Here's this very economical, very well thought out and strategic use of attorneys for those kids under 8. We only need 10. And because we have an infrastructure that has, volunteers, they report to program staff, and then the program staff has the structure locally too. It would be wasteful to appoint attorneys to every single kid under 8. This is a way that we leverage the state resources when it comes to best interests kiddos. Questions, comments, or thoughts? All right. Those are the attorneys. So we've been asking for that for years. And it's just something that the programs have always said, boy, it would be nice. So that's one thing. The next one that we're asking for is Americorps, help with Americorps funding, so that we can get 20 Americorps volunteers statewide to help with volunteer recruitment. And so what this funding would do, this $266,000, would help to offset the local portion required by the federal grant. Now, the week before the conference, I was writing the Americorps grant so that we could get to the Fed, so that we could get these 20, I want to call them volunteers, but they call them members because we pay them. So Americorps members or volunteers, whatever, 20 kids to put out there across the state. And so the federal grant requires this 24% matching grant. A lot of times, those who get Americorps, they would actually, the local programs would just pay, knowing that our programs have zero money. It's like, well, let's just get state funding for that and see if we can get that. So that's what this request is for. So the goal is to get 20 Americorps volunteers to assist programs, recruit and onboard new volunteers locally. So essentially we'll have 20 Americorps volunteers that we can put in 20 programs to help with volunteer recruitment, kind of coordinate that effort, do the recruitment, do those speaking engagements, or if you've got a program that wants to do that, schedule those meetings, schedule those things, do whatever it takes. Just get out there and say, we need volunteers. And then we're asking, so the goal is that each member would be asked to recruit at least 5 new volunteers per quarter. And that, if we did that, that would be 400 new advocates per year, just from the Americorps folks alone.
Hey,
Murrey.
Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah, I was Americorps down in California, and I had a blast. Americorps folks have great energy.
Marie, I can't tell you, having talked to all of these program staff who are half dead at this point because of COVID and just burnout, I cannot wait to have a whole bunch of volunteers that are ready and eager to go out into the community and bring that energy.
Yep. Good stuff.
And then part of the funding too, I hope we have enough, but the other thing is I'm going to hire somebody here to coordinate that project, because one of the things that the programs all said is, I don't want an intern that I have to babysit. And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. So one of the things that we'll do here from the state office is help coordinate those 20 and do a lot of that communication between those 20 AmeriCorps volunteers and kind of get them excited. I want to make sure that those AmeriCorps members are having a good experience out of this, right? And that we're not just dumping them off some Okanagan and say, great, go recruit 5 volunteers, but actually keep them together and talking with each other across the state as well.
Brian, we had a question from Julie, who is wondering how that resource would be shared with maybe the smaller counties that don't have an AmeriCorps program right now.
Yeah, so the nice thing about, yes, so we will be the state coordinating office for this project. So even though they may not have an AmeriCorps volunteer program in those small counties, we're going to be that resource here. Does that make sense, Julie?
Yes, thank you.
Great. It also gives us a lot more flexibility, not flexibility, but a lot more like, so rather than have to contract through the Y or like some other nonprofit, we're going to be that agency. And so we're going to be the ones that are providing the training just for our 20 volunteers. So there are a lot of moving parts to this, but we're just going to try it and see. We got to do something. So we also, the state office also applied for a planning grant at the same time to do that. So AmeriCorps has these like planning grants where you can get $75,000 to plan for your AmeriCorps grant next year. But I was kind of like, hey, we already got the court's approval to go after this state funding. So we submitted both the planning grant and the AmeriCorps grant at the same time. And then the AmeriCorps state person called and said, did you mean to do it this way? And I'm like, yeah, is that okay? She's like, yeah, it's just unusual. Usually you get a planning grant, then you plan your grant, then you write the grant. I was like, yeah, we're in a hurry. So she's like, okay, we'll try it. So we'll see what happens. My other plan too is to kind of have, since we'll have 20, like we'll also do like functional groups as well as regional groups. So then like we'll have like a group of kids. Sorry, I keep calling them kids. We'll have a group of AmeriCorps members that can concentrate on social media, maybe another that'll concentrate on events, newspaper ads, blogs, who knows, right? Like, but then they'll be able to help each other and help us in these recruitment to get out there and get the word out about volunteer recruitment. And we need this because COVID, I think most of the programs have done a pretty good job of keeping their volunteers active, but I will say that statewide, we've probably lost about 10% of the 10 to 20% of the volunteers over the past 2 years, just because of COVID and people not wanting to do this work remotely. So we need to build the volunteer base back up. So like I said, both requests have been submitted and approved to be included in the court's budget. The next step is the governor's budget, and that's due out mid-December. And then it's onto the state legislature. And this is where we could really use your help. So our legislative partners program. So while many or most legislators will meet with those outside of their district, so like me, I will go and try to meet with legislators and, talk to them and tell them our good idea and tell them why we need this funding. But what they really want to hear from are their constituents. And that's you. So in the chat, I am going to place the district finder. How many of you, most of you probably have at least some idea of what legislative district you're in, but in case you don't, I think that'll get you there. If you go there, yeah, if you just put your address in there, it will come back and tell you what district you're in. And if you don't mind, if you could drop that into chat, that would be awesome. So while you guys are doing that, 16th, State District 6. Okay, excellent. So the next question I'll get is my legislator important? Right? And so that answer varies. So primarily when we're thinking about policy issues or laws or things that are going to impact kids and families' independency, each house, both the House and the Senate, have a committee that those bills go through first. And so in the House, that's called the Children, Youth, and Families, right? And so they're the ones that start off with all the policy stuff. In the Senate, that's the Senate's counter, or in the Senate, that same committee where all those bills go is the Human Services, Reentry, and Rehabilitation Committee. So those are two very important, those are our two most important things when it comes to policy issues, two most important committees when it comes to policy issues. This time around, since we have a funding request, the other one that is going to be very important to us are the money committees. And in the House, that's known as appropriations, and then the Senate, that's known as Ways and Means. And so, Bonnie, I was hoping you were in Rolfus district, and here's why. Let's look at those legislators. So we'll start with the House. So in the House, actually, let's sort these. Well, these are in alphabetical order. But Representative Sin is the House. She's the chair of the House Children, Youth, and Services, or Children, Youth, and Families Committee. She knows us. I've talked to her a couple times. She's cool. I like her. But I probably, is anyone here? Did anyone say 41? Joy McLynn, you're in 41. So the next time so what I'd like to start doing is that when I have meetings scheduled with legislators, I'd like to reach out to you all and say, hey, I'm meeting with your legislator. Can you join me? And vice versa, if you know of a legislator or you've got a relationship and you want to schedule something, let me know and I'll jump in with you. The nice thing about Zoom is that it's really easy to kind of lump everyone in, right? And they're only 15 minutes. And if you've ever talked to a legislator, you're lucky if you get 3 sentences during a Zoom meeting in 15 minutes. So, and I don't mind being the heavy. I've learned that skill over these years. But so the House, we're in okay there. There's a couple, yeah. In the Senate, here's the big thing. The long-standing chair of this committee, Representative Darnell, has quit the legislative business and is now running, or not running, but she's in the administration of Purdy. Right? So she's running a women's correctional facility, or part of that. So she left and she was the chair of this committee. And so a couple of other things, the vice chair of this committee, Joe Wynn, he just ran to be the King County executive, but it's looking like he lost. So he's probably going to come back. But he's vice chair. And so I don't know if that means he's going to be promoted up to chair. It could. I've met with him before too. Human service or dependency is not really his strong suit. He's more into it because of like childcare and stuff like that. He's a Microsoft person. So that's how he got. So he loves data, which if you've worked in child welfare, you know, we don't have that much. So it's difficult. The other person who is also vice chair was Senator Wilson, and she's actually spoken at our events before. So she's a strong ally too. She used to be a family law GAL. But when we look at ways and means, so let's look at all of them together. So I put this list of all of our 4 committees together just to get a sense of kind of who might be where. So let's just go through the list here. Julie in 26. Okay. It would be really great if we could get meetings with both of these people, Julie. So Caldier is a former foster youth herself. And you know, the visitation bill that we just passed, the 1194, it was her that said the first visit needs to be supervised because of her experience as a foster child. She was the one that added that piece of the legislation. And Jesse Young is who's 33? Murrey, we're in the same legislative district.
Woohoo!
Have you ever talked to those folks before?
No, this is, I'm taking an economics and political systems and human services course right now. I really want your slides today ASAP because you're literally helping me with some homework. This is all new to me. It's interesting, but it's never been anything that I've been interested in. But yeah, so I haven't talked to any of those folks, no, but certainly be willing to help and available.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get you some extra credit, Murray.
Thanks, right?
So we'll talk to all 3 of those. So oh, Caldier, yes. Greg. Rolfus. She is I forgot to say this. She's the chair of a Ways and Means. So if you know her, it'd be great if we could get a meeting scheduled with her before session starts. She writes the budget.
I'll sure give it a try.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Caldier. Yeah. Let's see who else we got. Yeah. And Bonnie, will invite you to that meeting too. So you can see and so the way the budget process works too, and it's been a while since we've had to do this, but the way I understand it is we need to find a legislator who is willing to sign off on our budget proposal and say, yes, I will make sure that that budget piece, when they meet in appropriations or when they meet in Ways and Means, that they can speak to our budget request and can say and push it forward. If not, if we don't have anyone there to say anything, it helps that we're in the governor's budget, but we really need that extra. We need a legislator in both the House and in the Senate to be that person that will say, yes, I will fill out the form, and yes, we will put your budget request there. Pat, yes. Ormsby is the chair. Yeah, you knew I was going to get excited about that. So Ormsby is the Democratic, he is the lead budget writer for the House. And so apparently Martin Kohlrob, he knows him too. So we are definitely going to get a meeting scheduled with Tim. Awesome. You guys are awesome. I've never had this much success during a legislative partners recruitment party before. All right. Oops. So let's go back to the slideshow really quickly. Screen am I sharing? Stop share. It's too far. So communicating with legislators, off session is best. This time period between now and when session starts in January is the best time that we have right now to meet with legislators. So if we can get those meetings scheduled during this block of time between now and when session starts, awesome. This is the time. And, you know, just setting up those 15-minute Zoom meetings just so that we can go in there, tell them what we need, and then get out. During session, so when we sometimes we'll do advocacy days, that's the other thing. I'm not sure if session's going to be in person in Olympia this year, or if they're going to go back to Zoom like they did last year. And they're still, I think that's part of what they're going to be discussing in committee days, just kind of figuring out what the logistics are going to look like. But scheduling meetings during session, you have to know that legislators are stressed. And I've just never walked away from a meeting during Olympia when you're, especially when you're asking for money, where it felt good. Policy stuff, it's a little bit different, but like if you're asking for money, especially during like recessions, like they can't wait to get you out of the room fast enough. And they're rude. Like they literally are rude. But when you can meet them when they're at home, right? They're a little bit more laid back. They're minding their manners a lot more. And it's a better dialogue back and forth. And so in order of effectiveness, in person is always best. If you can meet them for coffee, I know because of COVID, that probably is not going to happen, but Zoom is pretty effective too. Phone's okay. You don't get that facial expression. Emails, if that, chances are your email is not going to get to the legislator themselves. It's going to go straight to their aide. They're not probably ever going to see it. Emails are good in bulk. Like if we could get a whole bunch of people sending a whole bunch of emails, but just you dropping a line to your legislator, it's helpful, but I don't know if it's effective. And then also, in order of effectiveness, not doing anything and then complaining about it afterwards. Like that doesn't work. So yeah. So I want to encourage you all to sign up for our Legislative Partners Program. We meet during session, we meet every Friday at 2 o'clock. And that's great because that's where I'll have met with the courts. I've also met with some nonprofit partners that I have, and then I'll be able to give you guys all the updates about what's been going on over the past week. This group, we'd always have a meeting at least the first 4 or 5 weeks during session, because that's when all the crazy stuff is happening. After that, and like the committee stuff dies down a little bit, then we just kind of like, if nothing new is happening, we'll just say, nope, we're not going to meet this week. We'll meet the next week. But part of that too, so in last year, we did not have that many people participate. And it would be great if I could have more advocates participating. We had like 2 last year. It'd be great if you guys could come and just hear and sit and just, yeah, they're really quick. I try to do like 45 minutes. That's about it, unless we've got something really juicy. But even then, there's not usually that much juicy stuff. And so if you are interested in this, I will ask you that make sure you give your program the heads up that you're going to be participating with this. I will just say, I have had my ass chewed out by more than one juvenile court administrator because I've been talking to you guys about meeting with your legislator. And I don't want that to happen again. So please check in with your program and just say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you mind?
And some of the programs are really open and encouraging for that. And like Ryan said, there are some juvenile court administrators that really don't want that to happen. So, or they just have to be really mindful. So definitely please do that.
Yeah.
What's
So
the conflict? What's the conflict with that?
oh,
Just
yeah, it's sometimes the court administrators will have their own things that they're wanting to get approved and pushed through, and they're just mindful that they want to know who's talking about their stuff before you go out and do that. It's gotten a lot better over the years, but that's why. So if you do sign up, you know, and we're going to start meeting with legislators, I would like to assume that you've already had that conversation, but I will ask you if you have or have not had that conversation so that we can get the permission that we need to. And then I also will email out every week an update that just says, here's where everything's going, here's what's happening, here's the bills we're tracking. Yeah. Any questions about that? On that form, you'll see ways that you can participate. Fill those out and tell me what you're comfortable with or not comfortable with. That helps. Yeah. Policy stuff. So I have not heard, I've been keeping my ear to the ground about any crazy like legislative proposals that might be coming out. There's nothing too shocking or too scary. I think the legislature did a lot of their work last year with House bill, with the visitation bill, and then also coming to a courtroom near you is this bill called 1227, but it's already passed. And then the only other bit of news that I have is what DCYF is requesting this year, what things they're looking at, asking for. And so all of these $1 million things, I'm assuming these are for 2 years. So cut it in half and that'll be what their ask is for. I'm assuming. But here's what the department's asking for. An additional $20 million to do ICWA. They want more social workers and more active effort specialists, more money for the AGO's office for legal costs, and they also want to start doing more culturally appropriate services, particularly for Native American kids. So that's $10 million they'll be asking for that. Placements, they want more children long-term inpatient beds, or you may know them as CLIP beds. And so those are pretty intense. Those are for older kids, but they're like the most intensive wraparound type of bed for kids in placement. They're super expensive. And right now, I think there's only about 10 of them statewide. So they want to expand that. And then also do BRS. So for those troubled kids, for older kids, hard to place kids, they want to do a rate increase for that as well. And that should be 38.5 million. I didn't do my math right this morning. So basically about $17 million for increased placements. They also want to make a push for more in-home services, both a rate increase and I know a lot of the service providers during COVID had to shut down. One of the biggest ones I heard was in Clark County, like their main service provider just closed its doors and said, we couldn't do this anymore. We were already operating at a loss for years. And with COVID, we can't do this anymore. So they just stopped. So figuring out how to get those in-home services and those services kind of stabilized with more money is kind of what they're hoping with. And then an increase for visitation. I'm curious to see where this one goes because we're not doing visitation anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how that, or as much as we used to. But they want to increase the hourly rate. They also want to start doing mileage reimbursement, better mileage reimbursement, and then being able to better monitor the quality of the services that are being provided. And my hope is that means more kind of coaching during visits when that's needed versus just somebody sitting there taking notes. Couple more. Expanded, so with kinship care, they're looking at expanded caregiver engagement. What they want to do is get more kinship caregivers licensed so that they can draw down foster care resources. They want to expand the pilot that was in regions 1 and 2 statewide. This other thing, there are all these things that I'd never have known about, but they want to repeal parent pay, which I didn't know if you guys knew this, but there is a statute on the books that will require if you're the parent of a child and they go to jail and they get youth if they get incarcerated as a kid, some jurisdictions make the parents pay a percentage, reimburse the county for their kids' incarceration. So they want to repeal that because it's not fair. Oh, and I already put visitation in there. So that's kind of what the department's thinking in terms of what they're going to be asking for. Rajan, yes.
Yes, hi. Hey, Ryan. I have a question coming back to the original program. Can you say, would it be like Jefferson County and Clallam? And who else would be put in this one?
So that it would be
Region 8.
Yeah, Thurston,
Yeah.
Grace Harbor, Mason, Jefferson, Clallam.
Oh, I forgot Mason.
It's easy to do, Rajan.
Thanks.
And these could change. Part of the other thing, I mean, we're going to be talking, if we get this funding, I mean, I'm going to be going to the local programs and saying, okay, does this make sense? Right? Do you guys have somebody? Who should we hire? Who do you want to contract with? Like, it's not going to be just, the local programs will have a lot of input. Because if we're only going to get 10, I want 10 rock stars. Because we can do a lot of good with 10 really good, strong attorneys supporting you in the work that you're doing. All right, I'll be reaching out to you, especially you, Greg, Pat. We got some work to do. So, all right, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Murrey.
Thank you.